Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
Outdoor recreation checks a lot of boxes when it comes to things that bring value to our lives. It drives our health and wellness, and it drives our economy. Here to discuss some new federal reporting and what it means for Michigan is the Vice President of Programs for the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, Mr. Chris Perkins, and the Executive Director of the Michigan Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, Mr. Brad Garmon. Welcome to the show, Chris and Brad.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Glad to be here.
This is great. And just for the record, we've got Brad in office, and Chris is joining us over the phone. So, Chris, can you give us just a quick overview of the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable? What is it, and when and why was it founded? What's your mission?
Sure. So here's the deal, Chris. We think that outdoor recreation is hugely important for American society and for the American economy. But sometimes that message can be difficult to break through unless you really come together around shared values, and that is really the origin story for the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable. We bring together industry organizations across the spectrum of recreation activities. So that's a million things that you can do in Michigan, like hiking, biking, skiing, climbing, hunting, fishing, boating, side-by-side, off-road, RV, camping, hospitality, horseback riding. We have 70 organizations under one roof, united behind the benefits of outdoor recreation and its value to society and the economy. And we use this platform to, of course, discuss issues of shared importance, like outdoor recreation infrastructure and access and funding. But we also use that platform to talk to policymakers at the federal and state level or agency leaders about why outdoor recreation is just so valuable and how we can help grow and sustain the outdoor recreation economy together.
That makes a lot of sense. So how are you governed? I mean, are you are you a governmental agency, or are you just a think tank of people that have a shared mindset, and then you lobby the governments for support and a microphone, or how does that work?
Yeah, we're a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3, a member organization. A little bit of our work is what you would describe as lobbying. So about 5 or 10% of our work is been dedicated to advocating for specific bills. But so much of it is just education about the value of the outdoor recreation economy, strategies to sustain it, things that are being done at the state level, like in Michigan, to grow the importance of outdoor recreation and connect everyone to the outdoors. So that's where I spend most of my time, especially on topics like rural economic development, outdoor economy data, workforce development, and state-level advocacy.
Fantastic. And I was looking at your website in preparation for this, and there was a number that was staggering to me. Can you tell the listeners about the combined economic output of the outdoor recreation industry on our economy?
Yeah, so part of the strategy in coming together was to recognize the combined impact of outdoor recreation to the U.S. economy. And for many years, the outdoor industry produced that information for ourselves. We'd put out an outdoor recreation economic impact report every year, and it was pretty impressive numbers. But if you present a report like that to a lawmaker or a governor or whomever it might be, they say, yeah, those numbers are impressive, but what's really going on behind the scenes? Like, you made these numbers. There must be some bias baked in. So in 2016, we actually had a law passed that created an economic impact account called the Outdoor Recreation Satellite Account at the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. And what this account does is measure the economic impact of outdoor recreation to the U.S. economy and state economies every year. And so at the end of the year, we get data looking back at the year prior. And so in November 2024, we got 2023 data. And yeah, the data was pretty unbelievable. It showed that outdoor recreation accounted for $1.2 trillion in economic impact in the U.S. economy. That's 2.3% of GDP, 5 million jobs, 3.1% of employment across the United States, and also showed that since 2012, which is the first year they were capturing this data, outdoor recreation has grown 36% in real terms. So stripping away the impact of inflation, apples to apples, 36% growth in the value of outdoor recreation nationwide.
That's an unbelievable number. And you rattled off all the different, the activities that fall into outdoor recreation. That was phenomenal to hear all the things, because it gets your brain started. It's like, yeah, I guess, I mean, people do have these kinds of hobbies, and people work in the industries that make the equipment that you're using to engage in these activities, and the sum of all of that spend and employment and real property and the manufacturing and all the things that go behind that. I mean, $1.2 trillion made me kind of fall off my chair as I was preparing for this. So, I mean, congratulations, I guess. I don't know if that's something you own, but you're certainly fanning the flames of the success and awareness of that, and that's really important.
Well, it's all about changing the perspective. When you and I talk about why we love outdoor recreation, we're probably not sitting at the trailhead saying, well, you know, it's really great for the economy. You and I are probably going to say, wow, it feels good for our physical and mental health. It's a great way for us to connect with our loved ones and our families and kids. That's really what outdoor recreation is all about. But when you have these economic impact stats like we do at the national level and in Michigan, it really starts to change the conversation about the importance of this industry and further investments compared to sort of traditional industries that we think about in terms of engines for growth.
Right. And so the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable is kind of the forum that people like Brad, who's joining us here today as, you know, a Michigan Outdoor Recreation Industry office, is a place for him to go to share ideas and share challenges or air things out and learn from, you know, peers around the country. Is that an accurate description of what the Roundtable's purpose really is outside of the lobby?
That's exactly right. We noticed that over the years that different user groups oftentimes ended up in conflict because they were competing over the 5% of things that user groups might differ in opinion on, but not focused on the 90 or 95% of things that all of us do agree on. Like I said, access to high-quality recreation infrastructure and sustainable funding. And so we created this forum so that the snowmobilers and skiers and the hikers and bikers could all be around the same table to find those points of agreement, knowing that a rising tide for outdoor recreation lifts all boats together. And Brad and his role in the Michigan office is incredibly important. We bring 16 state offices of outdoor recreation together, and it's in that forum that we're able to meet the needs of state-level outdoor recreation economies as well. And Michigan, I should add, really is an innovator and leader among these states.
Well, that's wonderful to hear. But before we get too far away from the money conversation, I want to thank our friends at Wagoner Financial. Are you ready to make smart financial decisions? Wagoner Financial offers a proven process for financial transformation, empowering individuals at all stages, whether you're just starting out, nearing retirement, or anywhere in between. Stop feeling unsure about your financial path. Wagoner Financial can help you undergo a financial transformation. Schedule a consultation today to discuss your individual needs by visiting wagoner-financial.com or call them at 517-853-3367. So I appreciate the nod to my friend Brad here at the Michigan office. So Brad, why don't you share a little bit? It sounded like 16 states were involved. Can you kind of talk a little bit about your experience with the Roundtable and what you get out of that?
Yeah, happy to be here and excited to be joined by two people that I know and have outdoor recreated with together. Yes. So yeah, Michigan is part of something called the Confluence of States, and I'm grateful to Chris Perkins, his team, Jess, and others at the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable for supporting states coming together. This is a pretty new movement. I think Chris alluded to the 2016 first time the federal government measured this stuff.
Okay.
So we're only talking, 10 years of a movement build toward everything you guys are talking about: greater awareness, greater respect, greater policy alignment around outdoor rec. So this confluence of states came together, and we are state offices that meet once a month, gather together twice a year, and are doing it really for the first time, not with any one lens of parks professionals get together all the time, tourism professionals get together all the time. The outdoor recreation economy has never had sort of a state level leadership looking at that broadly, the health impacts, the economic impacts, the community impacts. These offices, we're trying something new.
Right.
So we really wanted to build off each other, and I've really had a great experience and an honor being with that, and grateful to ORR for supporting us getting together because we learned so much, and there's no one right way to do this. Every state has its own politics, its own outdoor rec economy, its own sort of culture of outdoor rec policy making. So a lot of room to do things that fit your context, while at the same time pointing at these high-level outcomes, these high-level goals of elevation of all the benefits of outdoor recreation to economies, communities, and individuals. So yeah, Michigan, I got to lead Conference of States. I was elected chair a couple of years ago. Worked closely behind the scenes with Chris and others as we continue to evolve, mature, and get better data. I think we're coming back to that at some point, but better data all the time. And Chris is one of the experts nationally on how we think about and then build strategies that align communities around those numbers so we can get real jobs and real impacts and real investments based on those.
And Chris, if I can just illustrate the impact of this movement that Brad is describing. In 2013, you have Utah Governor Gary Herbert, who creates the nation's first Office of Outdoor Recreation. This is just a little over a decade ago, and he created this office because he thought it'd be a great unified forum to advance the state's outdoor rec economy efforts in unison. And since 2013, 24 states around the country have created these offices of outdoor recreation. And one thing I always like to note is the political diversity of these states. You have everyone from Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas, or Governor Doug Burgum in North Dakota, who was just confirmed as the Secretary of the Interior in the Trump administration, to, of course, Governor Whitmer in Michigan and Governor Shapiro. And those folks obviously have different politics in many ways, but they agree on the value of outdoor recreation to their states. And so this really is a bipartisan movement that's grown an extraordinary amount in a short amount of time.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's very easy to fall in love. I mean, everyone's got some sort of passion, it seems to me. I'm not much of a fisherman, but I do love to downhill ski and hike on trails. And I'm an economic developer by trade, so I understand, the connectivity and multimodal transportation and also the health and wellness benefits. So I think everyone's got their little slice of what they're passionate about. And it's also easy to understand how Louisiana's outdoor rec vision is different than Colorado's. The things that they maybe offer are different. So it's nice that everyone can kind of get together, share ideas, get best practices, feel like they're part of a larger tribe, but then go back and really focus on what they are leaning into and what the initiatives are of their particular state. Is that kind of an assessment of how this all kind of functions?
That's exactly right. Brad, through the confluence of states, is around the same table as Nevada and Arizona and Arkansas and New Hampshire. Of course, those states are different in many ways in their geography and recreation opportunities. There's a lot they share in common, and so to have this forum through which state directors like Brad can communicate what they're working on and what they might be challenged by and where they've seen breakthroughs is so valuable to help states move forward together.
Right. And as I was looking through the website, I did see, and you mentioned it a little earlier, but rural development. So you rattled off all different types of outdoor recreation activities, and some certainly are done in kind of more of a city environment. But I think it's easy to kind of daydream and just say, yeah, you tend to escape the city to go do outdoor recreation. And so maybe a rural development toolkit is warranted. So can you share a little bit about the impetus of that and what one might find in a rural development toolkit?
Sure. Well, you're right, Chris, that outdoor recreation takes place in a variety of places, from a few minutes out of one's front door in a local or urban park to these far-off landscapes or in the middle of Lake Michigan on a boat. And what we noticed is that a majority of outdoor recreation opportunities often are in or adjacent to rural communities around the country. And these rural communities are often communities who've historically been reliant on one industry or another that is susceptible to boom and bust cycles. And we noticed that outdoor recreation provides a good aspect of economic diversification that adds for stability in these rural communities. And it's not just for visitors, it's for the people who live there and value places for shared community and public health and improved quality of life. And so starting in 2020, we really dug into the process by which rural communities can make the most of outdoor recreation as an economic driver. And through around 70 interviews with practitioners around the country, including many rural leaders, we published the ORR Rural Economic Development Toolkit. And just to illustrate the interest in this topic, we put out an invite to our launch webinar early last year. And, at this point, we're all kind of zoomed out. We've been on enough webinars that they're a dime a dozen. But we had 1,200 people from around the country sign up for this webinar to learn about how to integrate outdoor recreation into their rural economic development mix, including many from Michigan. And I think what this illustrates is a theme that I read in a recent report from the Brookings Institute, which is that in today's economy, traditional economic development tools may be ineffective compared to investments in quality of life in place. Their research on smaller communities has found that community amenities like recreation opportunities are likely bigger contributors to healthy local economies than traditional business-friendly measures. I think folks are seeing this in their communities and want to understand how to tap in, and so we're happy to provide some support with our Rural Economic Development Toolkit.
Well, since you mentioned that, how would people tap into that? I mean, is there a website or a forum, or where can they get more information from you?
Yeah, if they search Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, Rural Development, they'll find our Rural Development Hub of resources, and our toolkit is a free resource that's open to any community in the country. And for that reason, we've actually seen it implemented in communities around the country as kind of a benchmark tool where they can look at the toolkit and the best practices and ask themselves, how are we doing today? Where do we want to be in 5 years, and what are we going to do to get there? So that's been a really heartening use of all this great research.
Fantastic. Okay. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a new study that was released from a federal standpoint, or your organization released kind of a report about outdoor recreation that covers the spectrum of the geography of the U.S.?
Yeah, one of the reports we released last year was on the state of funding for outdoor recreation across the United States. We know that we've grown significantly, but we also know that we have a long way to go to ensure the sustainability of the recreation economy. And of course, high-quality outdoor recreation relies on high-quality infrastructure and access and health of public lands and waters. So we did a study that looked at federal funding sources for outdoor recreation and found that if everything stays the same, meaning the rate of investment in outdoor recreation and the rate of inflation and the rate of growth of deferred maintenance across the country, we're looking at a $34 billion maintenance backlog for outdoor recreation infrastructure in the next 20 years. And that's a really big deal. These are the places that create lifelong experiences with the outdoors. Might be where a father and son get together and fish for the first time and build that relationship. If we don't invest in and take care of these places, a lot of those memories could be sacrificed. And so we put out this report to spotlight the importance of outdoor recreation and the need for increased funding, and hope that it catalyzes new investments in outdoor recreation in the years to come, and ideally investments along a bipartisan spectrum. We've seen through passage of recent legislation like the Explore Act at the federal level that the bipartisan appetite for outdoor recreation is quite strong, and so we need to channel that into new investments.
Brad, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but in practical terms, what would that backlog look like for something Michiganders could wrap their brains around?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think, and I think it's useful, maybe, Chris, we can get into a conversation about that. Like, how do we connect the dots there between sort of those big numbers you and Chris were talking about earlier on to these investments? So how does a community, take a rural community, think about investments that help grow that big chunk? In Michigan, it's, $13.9 billion outdoor economy. And as you pointed out, it relies on good infrastructure, trail access, investments in access to water. We need kayak launches. We need a lot of stuff. So we're doing that in a variety of ways in Michigan, but I think communities can feel that, and they can feel when something has not seen the investment. It's getting more use. We've got a lot of use through COVID, and it's stuck around. We've got parks, national parks and others in Michigan that are seeing, twice the visitation they had before COVID, and they haven't invested in the infrastructure to really keep up with that. Pictured Rocks, where I'm headed next week, is a good example. That's one of those that's got a lot of visitation, millions of visitors per year, for an infrastructure that was built for hundreds of thousands.
Got it. Okay. So it's some of its amenity or park system improvements and being able to handle higher groups of folks. But what about privately owned outdoor recreation service providers? So I think about last winter in Michigan was very soft, and we had a lot of kind of smaller ski resorts, maybe the big ones too, kind of waving the flag saying, we didn't make a lot of money, but this is really expensive to operate. Is there anything we can do to bridge the gap? Would that kind of be included in that?
Well, yeah, Chris, when you want to talk about I can talk a little bit about that, but if you want to circle back up to sort of the federal investment side, a lot of this has to do with, resilience, diversification, and that rural community toolkit, because a lot of those folks realize we really depended on those key dates around the Christmas travel season and others, and we needed snow in order to get people there. And so now they're thinking, how do we think long-term about resilience and start investing in a variety of offerings that maybe buffer that, get some more shoulder season activity with biking trails on our ski resorts and those kind of things. So that's going to be, absolutely an investment in infrastructure that's going to require a pretty strategic look at what our assets are and how we deploy them.
Makes sense. So since we're talking about the environment, I may as well give a nod to my great friends at Triterra. Triterra is a leading environmental consulting firm headquartered in Lansing with staff around the state to serve your brownfield redevelopment, environmental consulting, and natural resource management needs. Since 2008, Triterra has been successfully advising a wide range of organizations to implement solutions to complex environmental challenges. If you're a business, a developer, a property owner, a lending institution, attorney, or governmental entity looking for a solution, and you want prompt and timely service, don't hesitate to contact my friends at Triterra. Led by CEO and visionary Don McNabb and leaders JP Buckingham and Dave Van Haren, and there are dozens of technical experts you can't miss by calling Triterra at 517-702-0470 or check them out at triterra.us. So there's a need for funding. We've got a lot of these outdoor rec service providers, these rural places as well, that need improvements to manage additional capacity. And Chris, you mentioned bipartisan support, generally speaking. So are there bills that are introduced to try to deploy funds that go to the states, and then the states, cascade it down to grant recipients? Or what would the mechanics behind that money request look like?
I'll give you a great example. At the federal level, we have something called the U.S. Economic Development Administration, and they allocate funds for regional economic development organizations, regional development organizations that can then be channeled into local priorities in economic development plans. And EDA is a multi-billion-dollar funder of economic development across the country. But up until December, their authorities limited their ability to invest in outdoor recreation infrastructure, not because it's not important, but because it wasn't called out clearly in their language. And in the reauthorization of the U.S. Economic Development Administration, language was inserted that talked about outdoor recreation infrastructure development as an approved and authorized use for economic development funds, knowing the role outdoor recreation plays in economic diversification. And so now we have a federal funder with new authorities and multi-billion-dollar capital ready to put to work at the local and community level. And it's that sort of tweak that's made possible by the industry coming together and asking for those improvements that enables new funding at the regional, county, or local level. And that's not to mention all the various state funding opportunities that could be possible for outdoor recreation, or new trust funds or things like that states create to invest in outdoor recreation in the long term. But that federal to state to local connectivity is, of course, a really important piece of the puzzle.
Makes a lot of sense. So, as a citizen of the world and of Michigan, I am happy to know that the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable and Brad and his team at the MEDC are working on this to kind of improve my opportunities and my family's opportunities to get out and explore things. But what can I do? What can my listeners do? In addition to following along by social and websites, but is there anything you need from our listeners to help fan the flames of your progress?
I want to touch on a number that Brad shared briefly a few minutes ago, which is that according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, outdoor recreation generated $13.9 billion for Michigan's economy in 2023. That's 2.1% of GDP, nearly 120,000 jobs. So those numbers offhand are staggering. They're incredibly impressive. But they're perhaps more impressive when you compare them to other industries that are well known in Michigan. I'm looking at the same U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis right now, 2023 data, that shows that agriculture, forestry, farming, mining, oil and gas extraction combined amount to less than $13.9 billion in GDP for Michigan. So you asked what you can do, Chris. And it's to open the conversation with your friends and local leaders about the economic impact of outdoor recreation, not just for the state, but in your local community, and especially to compare it to these well-known industries that are thought of as engines of economy. Because when we shift the conversation from outdoor recreation as a nice-to-have to a need-to-have for economic development, I think we really start making traction together. So that would be my suggestion to your listeners, is to start having that conversation about the economic impact of outdoor rec, because it really starts to change minds.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, as we kind of conclude this this conversation, is there any other chapter in this report or new initiative or something that you're knee deep in that you want to share that I haven't brought forth in any questions I've asked?
So I mentioned earlier that 24 states have created offices of outdoor recreation, and here we are in 2025. So it's the perfect opportunity to launch a campaign called 25 in 2025, where we're looking for that 25th state to create an office of outdoor recreation nationwide. It could be places from Idaho to Iowa to Florida and everywhere in between. But it's not just to create new offices, it's to shine a spotlight on the incredible impacts of existing offices, like the Michigan Office of Outdoor Recreation Industry, which has done so much for the state since its creation. It's helped provide funding for the new Michigan Outdoor Innovation Fund. It's built the first off-road vehicle electric charging route in the U.S. through a local ORV dealer in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. It's helping build the first electric boat charging corridor. It's advocating for economic relief programs to outdoor recreation businesses impacted by the low snow winter last year. It's done so much, and we hope to shine a spotlight on the important work of Brad's office and the 24 other states who've created these offices nationwide. So it's going to be a fun year, and I encourage your listeners to advocate for an office in their own state.
Fantastic. Brad, any final thoughts as we wrap up?
No, really grateful, Chris, and I hope you got a chance to think about this a little bit in the context of Michigan. I know you've talked to some other states too, but thanks for the conversation and your support of Michigan. Our office here is grateful for the partnership with ORR, and looking forward to more, bigger work ahead.
And how can people get in touch with you, Brad?
Sure. Yeah. Similarly, like the easiest way is just to search for Michigan Outdoor Recreation Industry Office. You'll find us. But if you want to go to the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, that's michiganbusiness.org. You can find a lot of data. We actually use that to house some of this federal data that Chris is referencing, and then putting in a Michigan context and lens around it, so you can connect the dots between how many boat manufacturers in Michigan are contributing to that big number.
Right on. And Chris, remind everyone how they can get in touch with the Roundtable.
recreationroundtable.org or Outdoor Recreation Roundtable on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you.
Fantastic. Well, we've been having a great conversation with the Vice President of Programs at the Outdoor Recreation Roundtable, Mr. Chris Perkins, and the Executive Director of the Michigan Outdoor Recreation Industry Office, Brad Garmon. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining in today and sharing the story of your great work. I'm excited to have had you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
And I'd love to give a final shout out to my loyal sponsors, the Forsberg Real Estate Company, Wagoner Financial, Triterra Environmental, Good Marketing, Keller Williams, Advantage and Team, Michigan Rise, and the attorneys at Foster Swift. All fantastic people doing great work. And if you found the show as a one-off, I remind you to follow and subscribe to Michigan Reimagined on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts. This is Chris Buck signing off for Michigan Reimagined.